Hello out there, welcome back to the second of 2016's podcasts for ATCB. I am the Bastard, and today we're going to be talking about the video games we are anticipating in 2016. I am joined tonight on this slightly chilly winter night, probably the first chilly winter night of this winter, worryingly, by Christopher Corline.
Hello!
And by Sam, also known as Shabadoo.
Hello.
And by Sam, also known as Jojo.
Hello. Oh, should I do me last, Matt? God.
Yeah, well...
I was last yesterday, Sam. Don't worry.
He's been
Always
promoted.
Sam. He just has prejudice against us.
Yeah, so you got kind of on a rotation apart from Chris. Chris does get second billing because...
I've been here the longest. I've had to put up with him the longest.
It's true.
Yeah. Don't you sound quite so bitter.
Oh, well, you wait. You wait until you're in that situation. So, for everyone who saw or listened to the podcast last time, you know how this works. We just ramble. Really about the games, all the games. We're talking today about the games that are coming out in 2016 that we are most looking forward to playing. And we're just going to talk about them in a kind of alphabetical order because we don't have any better way to order them. So the first one of these that has been submitted is a really good one because it's one I submitted myself, and that's Banner Saga 2. Now, as Chris noted out before recording began, Banner Saga 2 is of course awful because they haven't updated to fully 3D graphics and kind of swanky. I don't know. It's not a first-person shooter, so yeah. But Banner Saga 2, for anyone unfamiliar with it, is the sequel to Banner Saga, which is a game developed by an offshoot, not an offshoot, but kind of some devs who left BioWare a while back. And it's got a couple of layers, but it's basically you play a band of sort of Viking/Anglo-Saxon shaped refugees fleeing across a fantasy land and occasionally being interrupted from their survival-based shenanigans by a turn-based tactical combat. And as Chris quite rightly pointed out in our very distant past podcast, it's basically a game made for me. The graphics are gorgeous. They're all kind of like hand-drawn 70s fantasy animation style. And I'm so looking forward to Banner Saga 2 that I have also kickstarted a Banner Saga board game. That should be with me, I think, before Banner Saga 2 comes out.
It does seem like the game could already almost be a board game,
from
what I've seen of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely got that kind of design sensibility.
To give it a glib patent Chris Corline tagline, I would call it Final Fantasy: The Last Unicorn.
I abhor the notion that anything could be linked to Final Fantasy, but yeah, it's an odd one because like it is more of the same because the story kind of carries on and it carries your choices and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not quite episodic because you can't buy the season and then have it all, and they're also like, I think the first one maybe took 10 to 12 hours to play through. So I don't think episodic is quite the right name for it, but it's certainly. Each one will just be a further into the last one, I think, is the idea. I think that they're going for a trilogy, but I'm just really interested to see where they go with the story. Because this is this sort of surreal fantasy thing. And, like, all the way through the first... Obviously, like, okay, spoilers for Banner Saga, so click forward, anyone, if you don't want to be spoiled for the first Banner Saga.
I kind of don't. Okay, I'm gonna count to 30 and then put my headphones back
Forward,
on.
Chris.
Okay, we've got 30 seconds to summarise Banner Saga. Go. Basically, you play these Viking refugees, as I said, and all the way through the game, you're fleeing from these big stone creatures called... oh my god, I've forgotten the name of them, and now I'll just spend 30 seconds trying to remember the name. The Dredge. And then at the end, it turns out that they are themselves fleeing, and that's why you're basically in the way of them, like, finding... their own lands, like places to settle again. So it's like a really interesting double thing, and it's like, what is that threat?
Okay, back, shut up.
Yeah, there we go. No, that's good. That's good. That's fine.
That was perfect amount of time.
So I'm really interested to see where the story goes with
So
that.
is this one of these, like, you play the original Banner Saga, if you enjoyed the original Banner Saga, get Banner Saga 2, it's just going to be exactly more of the same sort of thing?
I think so. That's the premise I'm excited about.
Fair enough.
So, like, if they go, there's these amazing new tactical stealth systems, I'll be like, fuck off. So I don't know, but yeah, Banner Saga 2. I mean, it's a kind of difficult one to talk about in a way because it is just more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already mentioned stuff about it on the channel. So
I'm reading that there's going to be new characters and a new race.
new
Interesting.
race.
So is the story you said as well is obviously an important part of Banner Saga. So do you think this one's going to follow directly on from that story? So you're obviously going to want to start with Banner Saga 1 and move...
I think so, but I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends how much of a problem they want to give themselves in terms of the story. Because as we know from, and as ex-BioWare people, as they will know intimately, you start hitting problems when you introduce a system whereby major decisions in a game can end up with, for example, with major characters dying.
Yeah.
So it's like in the second one, well, now we have to figure out which... Like, there is things like that in Banner Saga. I mean, there are really big things like that in Banner Saga. And more or less every character can die. Well, every character can die, but, like, all the minor characters can die really easily.
Yeah.
I think every character dying is called losing the game.
Yeah, every character dying, yeah. At least one has to be there at the end. So I don't know whether they'll do a thing whereby the characters that survive, it'll follow them, or whether they'll create a sequel where you have different main characters, and then the characters that survive from the first game turn up as as sub characters.
Yeah.
In a similar way to how, like, for example, Mass Effect 3 did it.
Yeah.
So I don't know which they'll go for. I'm happy with either of them. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that, and that kind of thing is cropping up more and more in games as we enter a kind of thing where that influence, almost an influence from roguelikes, I guess, of hey, your characters can die, this is a really good thing, is spreading out further and further. We talked a little bit last time about hybridization of games, and we've talked about it a lot before on the channel. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they do that.
When's it due out?
When's it due out? Oh, it's definitely due out on stall while I look. Yeah, I should probably actually keep a thing open for all these.
Apparently, it should be first quarter 2016.
There we go.
It's not long
there we
then.
go.
Okay,
Shabadoo is the administrator in charge of Wikipedia duties, or whatever, however he's looking at them.
Good job, Sam.
Yeah,
Very well done.
I'm important.
So I won't go that far. So next game. This is one that Mr. Christopher Corline has put on the list. I think a few other people will be interested in as well, and that is Deus Ex: Mankind Divided.
Basically, if you're not incredibly excited about this game, you were dead on the inside and the outside. If you haven't played Human Revolution, go and do it now. It's.
I'll be right back.
It's the most relentlessly cyberpunk game you can play.
It's and like not cyberpunk as in, I know we talked last time about kind of Shadowrun TM style cyberpunk, which is a bit tongue-in-cheek and maybe a bit dated. It's just gorgeous. I've never seen a game attach itself so elegantly to transhumanism and the conflicts of transhumanism, and just kind of build this beautiful functioning but scraping world around it. I think it goes to not Neil Gaiman, what's your man who did all those other cool books? William Gibson, kind of his quote when he was asked how do you write good science fiction, he said the trick is not to imagine the world in 500 years, the trick is to imagine the world in 5 years and then put yourself there. And that's what these guys do in their storytelling and in their execution. It's beautiful. In the gameplay, it's the same gameplay as all the way through Deus Ex. So you have multiple win conditions or multiple paths to victory, and you choose stealth, you choose run and gun, you can choose diplomacy. There's 100 different ways to solve any given problem, and it's just it's beautiful. The visuals as well, also from what I've seen so far. Yeah, it's going to look as gorgeous as the first one looked, and the first one was beautiful.
I think so, and the sequel looks to be going very much down the same route, but a bit more streamlined. I think they've talked about how various choices they made in the first game, because the first game is and by first I do mean Human Revolution rather than the original Deus Ex. Yeah, I think various choices they made they regretted a little bit.
Boss battles.
Yeah, how they outsourced those. They said that won't happen again, etc.
Yes.
And just differently, and as you said, Chris, they seem to really be going even more down that kind of transhuman versus anti-transhuman sort of vibe. The clues in the name, right? Frankly, I'll just be happy as long as it has as good a score as the first game, which is my favourite ever video game music.
Ooh.
So one other interesting factor about this is kind of the meta text surrounding how it's dealt with season passes and DLC and pre-purchasing, in that it's removed its entire pre-purchasing scheme, which was clearly, I mean, this is a Squeenix production, and as a producer, Square Enix is known to be a bit of the EA school of fuck the customers from all possible directions. And the original plan was that they were kickstarting the pre-order rewards. So if enough people pre-ordered the game, the rewards would tier up and you'd get better rewards. And this generated some predictable amount of backlash, and which in a turn of events, which I think is a first, definitely a first for 2015, the whole pre-order system was just stripped right out, and they said, this is a mistake, we've stopped it, please don't hate the game anymore.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It is, and I think the more AAA companies realize that alternative funding for games is not a way in which they can exploit to get more money. Like, and a lot of things are. They can exploit pretty much everything for money. But if you do that to a system that has gained popularity purely to provide an alternative route of funding, people are going to see right through that straight away, and just, rebel, not in a transhuman way, but and it was just that kind of cynical behavior, and we talked about it last time with Arkham Knight as well. The empowerment of the consumer that Steam has kind of put forward with its refund policy means that AAA games simply can't get away with horribly buggy releases anymore.
Yeah.
Because everyone will just get a refund. So
I know we could talk for hours and hours.
We could talk for hours and hours on that.
Which is cool, and we probably should, but
we should, but maybe a topic for a dedicated podcast in the future. Moving on to our next game, it is another sequel. These aren't all no, they're not all sequels.
No.
I had to double check. Dishonored 2. This is from Shabadoo, but also a bit from myself. But I tire of listening to myself, so Shabadoo, you take it away.
I am very excited for Dishonored 2. I think Dishonored was a game that I really enjoyed, and it was also, when I played it, felt very different to most of what I'd been playing around that time.
Yeah.
And I really want more of it. Just that's pretty much it. Everything I've seen about Dishonored 2 seems like it will be more of the same in terms of quality and the design of the game, but just with maybe more choices, a bit more variety in it, which is, I think that's exactly the right direction to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dishonored 1, in many ways, was sequel bait. Because the world building was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Some of the best world building I've ever seen in a video game. The environmental design was just gorgeous. And I know people who absolutely mainlined Dishonored, and I realise what I'm about to say is going to be a description of the way you play games, Sam. But I don't know if you did it with Dishonored, but a lot of people went into a level and just gunned straight for their target, and maybe picked up a side thing along the way, but just gunned for their target. And I feel so sorry for those people, because what I did with Dishonored was explore the maps completely. Partially to find out my best route to my target and alternative things I can do. It's Dishonored, if you haven't played it before, it's like a, I guess, assassination game, right? Like a first person melee with some kind of magic weird powers in a kind of steampunk-esque Victorian world.
It's quite difficult to describe.
It is quite difficult to describe. But crucially, the main mechanic of the game that made it amazing is something called blinking. which is like a short distance teleport that you have that you use to move between platforms and do all sorts of stuff. And that allowed the game designers to make like you'd be zooming around these little steampunk Victorian slums that are like awash with this horrible kind of zombie disease and all this kind of stuff. And then you'd be going, okay, I need to go down the street, and you'd notice further up on one of the like the sides of the walls of these like slum blocks would be an open window, and you'd be like, what's in there? That I know that ain't taking me to my target. What's in there? And
No,
what would be in there is world building.
Yeah.
Is like little journals and like you get like little treats, as it were, like little like chunks of XP or whatever.
Yeah.
But they'd have all these little side stories, and the world itself is interesting because it doesn't provide you answers. There are major plot points that are not answered by the end of the game, and they're weird. They are weird as well. A lot of the like magic-y stuff in it is just fucking weird and slightly terrifying.
It's a really a lot of like very good creative thinking has gone into the world of Dishonored.
Yeah.
Because it's quite easy to make a steampunk environment that feels that just feels kind of cliched, a little bit cringy almost, with like weird steampunk machinations going on. But the way that Dishonored does it, weaving in like this kind of strange magic and what is the substance they use? Is it whale oil?
Yeah, whale oil.
Yeah, whale oil.
But it's like it's not used in a typical way.
No, and there's something to do with the whales as well.
Yeah.
That's like there's just loads of weirdness piled on weirdness piled on weirdness.
Yeah.
It's great. It's got a great plot.
Great voice acting as well.
Great voice acting. It suffers a bit from predictable. Well, I won't say in case people are. Spoilers. Skip forward a few seconds.
I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, then block your ears for 10 seconds.
Okay.
This is a good tactic. It suffers a bit from predictable betrayal syndrome, which a lot of games do. But there we go. But Dishonored 2, one of the things that's worth noting about Dishonored 2, because we've fallen a little bit into the trap of talking about the previous game here, is that I really like this. It's a game coming out. I don't know whether Dishonored 2 would count as AAA, but it's up there. It's a big game. And it's part of a new wave of games that aren't open RPG games where you usually get to define your character and the interesting stuff around that. And yet, the designers have made a conscious decision, which can't have made life any easier for them, of saying, okay, you actually have your choice of two characters in this game, one male and one female.
Yeah.
And that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also the way that, I mean, spoilers, but one of the characters is from the previous game.
Well, both of them are.
But one of them is like obviously not your character in the previous game.
No, one of them is Corvo, who you play in the previous game, and the other one is a female character who is in exactly. It's thematically appropriate, and it's providing, people options. Play who you want. Play how you want. I believe in the game as well, they have different powers.
Yeah.
As well, or like slightly different powers, which again can't have been made life any easier for them.
And it adds so much to the replayability, which is sort of a problem with games like Dishonored. It's can true. Be.
They are, although the first game had the chaos system, right, where like the more people you kind of casually killed, the worse the world got. So. Because you can play Dishonored 1 straight through as like a direct combat game, and it is actually easy, but it'll get harder and harder by the end, because the more chaos and death you cause, the more the world devolves into chaos around you. That's just a great idea.
Great balancing method,
So Dishonored 2 will hopefully have more of that, and like you say, Sam, more choice, more.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out it's an interesting pattern so far. We've talked about 3 games, and all 3 games as sequels are, one, the kind of sequels that people look forward to because they're not so much baited as they are anticipated. And 2, they're all sequels of games whose original version was very, very good. So just an interesting pattern there. Unlike kind of, I don't know, John Madden Basketball Simulator 2017.
Yeah, they're not iterations, they're evolutions.
Yeah.
I think another big thing is that they're all games that it's not like they've been going they've been like recalled from like 20 years ago to make a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the oldest games in the universe. I would also say that it's that all three games that we look at are three games that if they literally just wrote 10 or 15 hours of extra gameplay on the original game, everyone would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, which is I almost said it's a rare thing nowadays, but it's actually not. It was a rare thing 5 years ago, and it's a more common thing now, and it's really good. I think people were very doom and gloom about gaming about 5 years ago for good reason. I think the 360 and PS3 generation was kind of grinding slowly to a halt. PC gaming had a lot of problems with it in a number of ways in trying to match up to that, and now everything's just blown wide open. Kind of the escalation of the indie scene and that kind of middle ground scene between where indie games now look really good. So they're still technically indie games, but they feel like just a kind of sub-AA, AAA game in quality. Quality of looks and sound and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a tremendously exciting time to be gaming. And I think that's reflected in these. I was wrong about it because Banner Saga 2 is an iteration rather than an evolution. As far as
I want to posit as well that the reason why we're seeing these games is that we would be happy enough with an extra 15 hours gameplay on top of the original engine is gaming gradually evolving as a storytelling medium rather than as a straight-up entertainment medium.
Yeah, exactly. Indeed. We're no longer yearning as much for new mechanics because what is keeping us going a lot of the time in these franchises is the story. Yeah. And therefore, you don't need a new mechanic for story, although it can help. Speaking of... No, I can't make a link.
Well, okay, exactly opposite to the discussion.
Exactly opposite to the discussion in that the storyline of this game is... The storyline of this game is created by the players, not by the devs, no matter how much they try. So, Chris, tell us of Eve Valkyrie. We will shut up for the next half hour.
It's not going to be that bad. But, this is, as opposed to the last three games, Eve Valkyrie is not just a new game, but a new game on a new platform, a new game utilizing a new media almost, and it is EVE Online finally entering into the world of kind of first-person dogfight simulator via the medium of virtual reality. It is launching on the Oculus Rift and the PlayStation, whatever it's called. And so far, this has just been an absolute fairy tale from start to finish. This game was knocked up by some basically interns, QA, Egypts, and a couple of board developers at the office a couple of years ago on an Oculus Rift dev kit one of the guys brought in. It was shown to some people and then just completely exploded out of all proportion. Oculus wanted it on board as a launch title. Sony pulled some strings to get it ported onto their system because CCP are tied into Sony a little tiny bit. And along the road, the gameplay has become a little bit more complicated. And of course, with the hardware taking longer than the software, because this is a new hardware platform as well, there's been a lot of time for them to look at the gameplay and iterate on the gameplay, for better or for worse, I don't know. But what we have now is basically the first, certainly the first that's been developed for the longest time, virtual reality dogfighter game. And it looks very much to be in the style of kind of maybe a slightly more claustrophobic Wing Commander, maybe kind of pulling in a bit of Descent Free Space from back in those days, and set inside the world of EVE Online.
And therefore populated by absolute bastards.
Shut up, you hippie. The thing with, all this stuff aside, this is going to be a great little dogfighter regardless, and you could put flipping My Little Pony skins on it and it would still be a good dogfighter. What will make this different is that CCP are the pioneers of metagaming, intergaming, where they will allow the outcomes from different styles of games on different platforms to impact each other in different ways.
Sure. See also Dust 514, right?
Which is a perfect example of it, and if more people would play it, it would be even better. Dust 514, your battles, it's a first-person shooter on PS3, your battles impact sovereignty and control efficiency for industrial components of the massive MMO EVE Online.
Itself, yeah.
Yeah. E-Valkyrie, as yet unconfirmed, but it's inevitable that these guys are going to try and hook something ridiculously cool like that into, to the extent where I suspect that in a couple of years when you are launching fighters from your carrier in EVE Online, those fighters will enter into a shard where they will be populated by human pilots in E-Valkyrie.
That was exactly the question I was going to ask. That is awesome.
That's incredible. And if they pull it off, and if there's still enough people playing EVE at the time for them to pull it off and make it work, it's going to be gorgeous. Start
EVE
to
will
finish.
never stop. I don't know what you're talking about.
I would be so excited for this game if I could afford an Oculus Rift.
The only thing really, because I've tried EVE before, and as we discussed before, I just can't. I don't want. I like spreadsheets, but I don't want them in my games. The thing for me about this that I'm looking forward to isn't the game, because I'm very unlikely to play it. I'm very unlikely to play EVE Online and stuff like that. Is that anything more that CCP do with this kind of stuff just makes those EVE stories I read online so much better. Where I would just read them and go, oh my god, these people are awful, but these stories are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. It's the problem with EVE Online is it's pushing 20 years old now. It's a huge time investment, and it is unfortunately starting to shed players. The EVE Valkyrie has broken new ground already, and I'm very happy for that. But the kind of single-sharded world idea and the metagaming and the intergaming ideas that they came up with may all come to naught, unfortunately, if they can't pull this all together.
Yeah. It's interesting. The basis of EVE Valkyrie here is from the actual Oculus Rift perspective, from the VR perspective, because I mean there are games out there that can do dogfighting, like Elite, for example, can do dogfighting with Oculus Rift support. Elite isn't perfect for its Oculus Rift support, but it can do it, and other things that do have some VR support like that. But EVE Valkyrie, as you've said here, is actually based fundamentally on that point. It's built first from
It's built from
the idea of VR, and then the game comes from that. That is really a really interesting idea.
That's 100% the key point. You can have support for a certain media or a certain technology, or you can build your game around that technology, and that's where EVE Online's the first in this scenario, I think. Or that's why Valkyrie is the first in this.
And I think that will lead Valkyrie to maybe have not as many players, but the players they do have will be very fucking dedicated, because they'll have paid for a fucking Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it'd be interesting how much of a difference it does make. Because, like, if it makes a huge difference, then I think you'll see a lot more, like, dedicated Oculus Rift games.
Yeah.
Whereas if people still, like, if there's a difference, but people are still, like, happy to play like, dedicated Oculus Rift games, then I think you'll quite quickly see pure Oculus Rift games, like, die off, or at least become quite rare.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I think a lot of the future of VR, I mean, VR will arrive in one form or another. All it takes is for a VR device to be affordable and to have a killer app. I mean, that's all it ever takes. I think a lot of the immediate future of VR, whether, Oculus Rift or not, is kind of revolving around what Valve are going to do with theirs. By all reports, it's better than Oculus Rift. And they have the industry sway to have people program a lot of stuff from it and have an immediate distribution point.
Not a good history in terms of quality control or hardware support. Not hardware support, but hardware development.
That is true. Their recent hardware efforts have been a mixed kind of reception, certainly. But the initial reports of it were very promising. But then with VR they always are. So it's a crapshoot. But it'll be interesting to see what comes of it. Anyway, moving on. but to something very similar to Eve, Gang Beasts. For anyone who hasn't played it, this is probably maybe the smallest game on the list, with maybe the exception of one of Chris's coming up later. Gang Beasts is a very small multiplayer brawling indie game where you play weird, pudgy, brightly coloured dudes with a slightly wonky control system, throwing each other around amusingly dangerous environments. It's interestingly, when it was first designed, the idea was that you'd have all these different skins you could put of your characters, and they're still kind of introducing those. But the pudgy Play-Doh kind of protagonists were just a stopgap until they were like, oh, we'll figure out the default look later. And then they were so popular that they've kept them in, which is lovely. It's also got a bit more funding behind it now, because basically Double Fine went, yeah, we'll pay you to make this. We'll pay you the rest of the way and sponsor it, and you can release it.
Kingpins of indie development. That's
yeah,
cool.
you can sponsor it through Double Fine, or either that, or they kind of walked into the office and said, "Nice game you've got here."
Shame if someone were to dump a load of money on top of it.
Either way, Gang Beasts has been available as a kind of alpha, beta build, whatever, for a long time now. We have played it here at A Town Called Bastards, and it's
hilarious. In
its initial iteration with like 5 or 6 maps and extremely walking, it was already extremely entertaining.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to it coming out, and it seems like the kind of game where as soon as it's already had a lot of like YouTube and Twitch attention. But in the same way that Nidhogg did when it came out, it's going to get pushed so hard through those methods, because it is hilarious to play and it is hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
Because it's just fucking ludicrous.
Just go on YouTube and look at it now if you haven't seen it before.
Yeah,
because you can't really describe it.
Yeah, it's really hard to describe why it's funny or why it's even fun, because
it's because the physics engine is actually decent.
Yeah.
But your little guys and the environments are fucking ludicrous, and your control over the little guys is ludicrous. It has like a weird thing for control over each arm, so you can end up grabbing people and kind of lifting them and walking around. But you just walking around looks hilarious. So it's just it's quite a difficult game to master, and even when you do, beginners can easily kill you through sheer dumb luck.
Yeah.
Or you just falling into a pit or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of scope for like environmental hazards, because of the physics engine works so well. You can have like one of the funniest levels is like a window cleaning
outside the office block. Yeah.
And you can like punch the cables so that the platforms like fall down, and since there's 2 different platforms, you
jump in
try
between
and
them
get
is
the
just
other person
entertaining.
on a platform and then just knock it down, or
you'll end up with someone jumping between the platforms and they'll only manage to grasp the edge of the platform, and then they're just dangling there for minutes until someone finds the energy to kick them off the edge or something. It's hilarious and it's really good fun.
If I may offer another Chris Corline headline for this one, I'd say it's Super Smash Brothers meets QAOP.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. You should be a jaded hack video game journalist.
That's what I'm going for. Thanks.
So, Gang Beasts. Next one is another one on my list, although I wouldn't be surprised if it's on a couple of other people's as well. I'm looking at Shabadoo in particular. Kingdom Come Deliverance. First off, the name. It was originally just called Kingdom Come, which is a great name for a game. And then they decided to add something after a colon, because apparently all games need that. Because it shows that it's a part of a new franchise rather than just a game on its own.
they're going to deliver, Matt. That's the implication.
They're going to deliver, yeah. It's another Kickstarted game. I look at this as essentially there's this burst of open world or open galaxy sci-fi stuff. We're going to talk about a couple of them later. We've also already mentioned Elite Dangerous. This is the same thing for history nerds. What they're talking about is basically a very open world, trying to be as historical as possible, kind of swordy thing set in the Holy Roman Empire. Now, I'm excited for this for a number of reasons. Number one, I much prefer history and fantasy over sci-fi. Number two, I like anything that attempts to make a real, genuine effort to be historically accurate, even if that makes it boring. For the most part. So I'm really looking forward to it. Third, the Holy Roman Empire is a really interesting setting that hasn't been touched in any video games beyond stuff like CK2, where it isn't really, you can't walk around in it. It's also interesting because Holy Roman Empire was an area which was such a massively important part of Europe for a very long period of time, which most people have never heard of. Which is mind-blowing when you... I'm not criticizing because it's not generally... People don't talk about it that much. If you actually don't know, just for your education, for nearly 1,000 years, what we now call Germany, although it was more than just Germany and Austria and northern Italy and parts of France and parts of Poland and various other places, were called the Holy Roman Empire, and considered themselves a direct follow-up to the Romans, which they kind of were, and were a really big deal in Europe because they were huge. They had a lot of power. They had a lot of military power. It's really interesting that they've almost vanished. They haven't vanished from history books, but they've certainly vanished from the history books you usually get taught about in school. And not usually touched in gaming, and it's really interesting for those reasons. I'm looking forward to it a lot. It looks very pretty, especially for the level of kind of development that's going into it. It's not a AAA studio. The creators have talked a lot about how it's not just swords. Like, you can, again, this kind of Deus Ex thing, you can solve a lot of problems through talking. You can just wander around and pick what you do, kind of like... I think there's crafting stuff, so if you wanted to roleplay just like a fucking blacksmith or something, you can kind of do that. And I find that interesting. My one trepidation on it is that there was a little bit of fuss around... I always worry when things are presented to be historically accurate, whether what they mean is we are making the very most effort with modern historical research to look up and represent a broad swathe of the politics and the population and the culture and stuff like that, as can be reasonably expected from the time. Or if what they mean is we've taken the firmly established establishment history of it, which is mostly written by very stuffy scholars in the mid-20th century, and turned that into a game. And that kind of stuff almost always leads to... without getting all SJW on it, a very white male-centric environment, which isn't actually true.
I think based on watching videos of the developers talking about the game they wanted to make, they seemed very enthusiastic about the history and having things be accurate, and also very enthusiastic about the fact there's no magic in this game, which I think is...
which I am as well. I do like my fantasy low.
Yeah,
so...
that leads me to believe it will hopefully be quite accurate.
But then we've had
researched.
We've had the recent thing, and I know we talked about Witcher 3 before in this yet, but obviously there was a bit of a fuss, a bit of the whole SJW Gamergate rah thing around Witcher 3 after it came out, because I think every single character in Witcher 3 is white. And the developers came out and went, oh, well, we're just representing Poland in the medieval period where everyone was white. To which a lot of Gamergaters went, yeah, you see, it's historically accurate. And a lot of other people went, well, that's not actually true. Which it isn't. Yeah, I don't know. Historical ethnocentrism is one of my bugbears. Don't hear that on many podcasts. And I hope it fits in with a level of historical accuracy that isn't about whether they have the right guard on their sword, but whether the culture is richly representative of a genuine, real culture, as opposed to a kind of idealized, when all this were fields and white men sort of thing.
I'm definitely excited about how much detail they seem to be putting into the systems in the game, specifically the combat. because they talk a lot about how they've done, how they put in a lot of work to make the sword combat feel rewarding, but also kind of realistic.
Yeah, they've worked a lot with HEMA people, I think, historical European martial arts people, to try and get the sword play more kind of accurate for the time, and that's nice.
I think it's something that games have traditionally struggled with.
They have, and the games that have tried to do something about it, especially recently, have fallen on their arse. See also, was it called Clang? The kick-started, just kind of like dueling game that there was a big fuss about, and then it just collapsed. Yeah, so it'll be interesting anyway. And if you know more about Kingdom Come, or you're a developer of it or something, I'm sorry if it feels like I'm kind of impugning you without the knowledge of what you're actually doing. But I'm just concerned about that. And equally, if you hear what I say and go, well, that doesn't matter. All that matters is swords and game. It's just a game. Then I'm also sorry that you feel. I'm sorry for you, really. Oh God.
I have a tag for this one, which I spent the last 10 minutes thinking up.
Go on.
Deus Ex Carolingian Renaissance.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I get the impression less immediate story though, because it is a world you go into rather than a story you play.
I think it does have a story,
Mm-hmm.
And they've talked about it being a trilogy, etc.
Okay.
But I think the level to which you interact with that story is kind of up to you in a kind of Elder Scrolls kind of a way. But I don't know how focused around that main story it is, whether it's more or less optional than in Elder Scrolls. I don't know. I'm interested to see the world, and I'm interested to experience that. And I'm a history nerd, as is Sam. I know he's our resident history person. So
I'm interested to see with this game whether it's actually going to be possible to make a no magic, completely basic, down to basics role-playing game just based in medieval Europe actually fun on its own right, because I think they definitely will be able. I think it's definitely possible to do.
Yeah,
well, it hasn't really been shown to actually be demonstrated to be fun before, which is quite interesting. So
absolutely. I mean, you've got stuff like Mount and Blade, but
that's
which you
different,
can role play. But
yeah,
it's light in that. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Anyway, that's probably enough about historical ethnocentrism, and probably enough about Kingdom Come.
Never.
Not from me, but everyone else will be nodding off. So. Jojo, one from you, Lego Worlds.
Indeed. So this was just a short one from me, which I only didn't spot that long ago, really, but just kind of came up out of nowhere. So effectively, Lego Worlds is a totally freeform, open-world Lego game, very much in the kind of similar vein to Minecraft. You could walk in a straight line in one direction, it would continually generate more world forever sort of thing, but everything is Lego. The entire world is Lego. So obviously there've been quite a lot of Lego games out before, but they've mostly been very much kind of story-driven. And I remember many years ago there were kind of more freeform games when it's more about the building and the construction of Lego bricks and things like that. But there's never really been a properly freeform Lego game where you can just build and do and go wherever you want. And to me, Lego Worlds is the first time I've ever seen that. It is truly free roam, and absolutely everything in the entire game, the ground you walk on, as far as I can tell, infinitely underground, is made of Lego bricks. Every single vehicle, every single animal, every single person is all Lego, and they're all interact-withable, and you can dig and build and construct and mess with everything.
Is it actually MMO-style multiplayer?
Currently, it is only single-player in the iteration it's in, but it's intended to be multiplayer by the time it comes out.
There are going to be so many Lego dicks.
Also, can I raise an objection to this entire concept? A free-form building Lego game will never actually just beat actual Lego?
No, it won't. It's true. The one benefit, however, is that you can never own enough Lego. This game lets you own all the Lego you could ever possibly want to own and do whatever you want with it. This is pretty much the only reason to own the game. This is a good reason to own the game.
For anyone, I can't remember if you've talked about Lego on board game videos before, Sam, but Sam likes Lego.
I like Lego. I like Lego.
I remember watching Sam watch a video of someone driving around in a car, in a Lego car in this game.
Yeah.
And literally just laughing himself almost to death.
I'm imagining him clapping his hands like some kind of insanely expanded long-haired ginger toddler.
That was the moment that I first discovered the game, and I was extremely excited. If there's anyone out there who's just genuinely excited to go and mess around with Lego, but is limited by actually owning Lego, go and watch a video of this game. It is genuinely unlimited, and it's excellent. It looks excellent so far, anyway. It's still relatively early in development, I think, but working quite well so far.
To be fair, I mock, but I can totally see the appeal in that. Because, like, obviously, like, I've never played Minecraft myself. I can see the appeal of it, but it just doesn't hit my buttons. Whereas, presumably, in Lego Worlds, because you've got different sizes of Lego brick and different interactive things, there's more scope for building things mechanically.
Yeah.
So I can see the appeal, and it's Lego, and everyone does like Lego. Everyone likes Lego.
I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened before.
Yeah, that's what I think as well when I see this game, and I've been waiting for it for a long time, and all of a sudden, there it is.
In all honesty, and the Dick's comment was flippant, but I don't think it's happened before because they've spent so long trying to figure out a way to make their game multiplayer while maintaining it being child-friendly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think another question that's going around that development house right now is why are we trying to make Minecraft again?
Yeah, probably. But I think that's where the mechanical aspect comes into it.
Yeah, I think this is the whole point. Like, effectively, this is not the same game as Minecraft. There is no Minecraft-style crafting system. There's no building different types of block and things like that. The idea here is, effectively, if you want to play a game like on the same vein as Minecraft, but you want to play it with Lego and you want to be able to build Lego designs and things like that. For example, you could plan out your Lego designs in this game if you wanted to. You could build anything you ever wanted in this game.
That's my second concern. There have been kind of Lego building simulators, and they've been around for quite some time, and they are all about as much fun as any other computer-aided design program.
Yeah, I think the feel of this one, the reason this is going to be fun, is a combination between that and Minecraft. And Minecraft is unequivocally fun.
Of it. Is it first person?
No, it's kind of a third-person over-the-shoulder thing. I don't know if you can go in first person.
Which makes it, and again, it sounds flippant to me to say, well, third-person makes it a different game to Minecraft. But in a game like this, that actually is a significant difference in terms of how you think about how you're building. Because Minecraft is presumably intensely personal, whereas in this, it's more detached and, like design-focused and stuff.
Yeah, this game is definitely more about the design of the build.
Are there enemies?
I don't think there are yet, no. There's like NPCs at the moment in the game, but they don't really do much. I don't know about plans to put enemies in. There probably will be like things you can go fight when the full game comes out, I expect. For example, they're putting in full underground areas and things like that soon, so I expect they'll probably put bad guys in some of them and things.
I think Chris's point is perfectly valid in that, what you'll have to... A game like this is actively setting itself up as a Minecraft rival, and that is a hell of like an elephant in the room.
A lot of failed at that, yeah.
Especially this long after Minecraft is...
Yeah.
Like, if they saw Minecraft and were immediately like, we should just make a Lego version of this, then they'd have a bit more of a shot.
Do you know what, lads? I remember having this exact same conversation concerning a pretender to the MMO throne coming along years after the original default state of MMOs, and this pretender was called World of Warcraft. So,
it's like this will never be like
it's just EverQuest, but it just looks like cartoony. It's nonsense.
Yeah. So who can tell what will happen? But it's definitely interesting, and it's fucking Lego.
Yeah, exactly. It all hinges on how well they put together the actual Lego mechanics. If they make it so that like the Lego in it is really, really good and satisfying to work with and feels like real Lego, I think it'll be a success.
Yeah. Okay. Lego Worlds. Next up, one of mine. Again, a couple of others might jump on this bandwagon. Mass Effect Andromeda. Another sequel. This time to the Mass Effect trilogy, but intentionally set apart from it, both in terms of the character you play and difference in geography and time, in that it's set a significant way after the Mass Effect trilogy and in a new galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy. I love the Mass Effect trilogy. I really do. They're my favourite BioWare games. I adore them. They're probably my favourite role-playing games. They've got issues. The first game has wonky combat and some areas that are quite boring. The third game is a slave to its own narrative, and I don't know if you've heard this, Internet, but the ending's slightly controversial. I still fucking love them. I think they're amazing games, especially when taken as a whole. Basically, as long as the quality is roughly approximate, BioWare could just formulate this game out of Mass Effect flavoured jizz and fire it into my face with a high-speed cannon, and I would fucking pay them for the privilege. So I'm not entirely unbiased, is what I'm saying on this one.
But this does match what we were saying earlier about games that you would be happy with Mass Effect 3 plus
Yes.
with. So that's just an interesting interesting carry on.
It's starting to look a little bit like the design of this is paralleling Dragon Age Inquisition quite a lot, which we talked about last time. In that Mass Effect looks more of a kind of semi-open world sort of thing, where there's more exploring and there's more wandering around large areas, and it's maybe a little less focused on a core central plot. If they create Mass Effect, if they create a Mass Effect version of Dragon Age Inquisition, I'll be fine with that. I will be absolutely fine with that. I know Dragon Age Inquisition is something there was a bit of a backlash about, but again, as discussed in the previous episode, I like it a lot. And if they do a Mass Effect version, it'll obviously have to be quite different anyway, because it's a shooter as opposed to a kind of either arcade bash 'em up or tactical RPG combat, depending on how you play Dragon Age. So it'll be a bit different, but I'm so just first day purchase. You won't hear from me for a week. It's just one of those games on my thing. I love the universe they've done. It's a very rare thing for me to immediately click with a sci-fi with a kind of sci-fi IP that isn't Star Wars. And yeah, just so good. Who here has actually played all 3 Mass Effect games other than me?
Silence.
Good. Okay. Who here has played one of them?
Yes, I played one of them.
Which one have you played?
Number 1.
Okay.
These were the other 2 played either Mass Effect game. Any Mass Effect
I've
game.
played
Hang on.
some of the first one.
Hang on,
Okay.
Chris, haven't you played the first one?
I certainly played the first one. The second one is in my Steam library and has been in my Steam library for about 2 years.
The second one is installed on my PC and not yet.
Oh,
done.
for God's sake! I hate you both.
It's
It's
not
70 hours worth of gameplay.
It's- no,
For God's
it's
sake.
not.
Commit
And
to
the
that.
blue
It's actually
lady
not.
wouldn't let me touch her breasts the last time.
Oh, you're all that's worst about BioWare fans.
I also own all 3 of these games.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Look, it's actually not. It's a big game. I think the most I've ever spent on a Mass Effect 2 playthrough that included all the DLC was about 45 to 50 hours. And you could certainly do it in 30 if you ramp down the difficulty. They're not as big as, say, Dragon Age or a number of other big RPGs, partially because of the mechanics of, it's a shooter rather than anything tactical. I would say that the original Mass Effect is a really good game. What it is a great story with a slightly wonky game ladled on top of it. Mass Effect 2 is awesome in gameplay and in it's a great shooter. It's so good. I implore you all to actually move on to Mass Effect 2. Find time in your lives, because it's simply one of the best role-playing games ever made. And I mean that in terms of role-playing, not in terms of RPG.
Yeah.
There's very little inventory management in it, but you will be role-playing like a champ. So, yeah. Mass Effect.
Basically, you're going to be excited for Mass Effect already if you're a part of the Mass Effect series. If you're not, play Mass Effect 1.
You play Mass Effect 1 and 2 and 3.
And 2 and 3.
And then
And 4 when it comes out.
Andromeda. And then just go to BioWare and camp outside their offices and don't stop camping until they make 5.
It's interesting to hear you say it's more focused
Never
around
stop camping.
the have the open world and have the areas, because that was one of my big issues with the original Mass Effect. Although I haven't played 2 and further, I was like, I see this beautiful universe I'm in.
Yeah.
I can only walk to certain specific story areas of it, really, generally
Yeah.
speaking.
That did not stop you driving around every planet.
No, I was
Didn't
constantly
make it.
hoping to find areas that weren't just, this is a story place you want to go, and it didn't
Or a
really
collectible.
happen. Yeah,
like a collectible or something. Okay, well, here's the thing from Mass Effect 2 and 3. That frustration will be removed from you entirely.
The option goes away, I know.
Because the option completely goes away. And it becomes
Also, that's
all
an
about
improvement.
the story areas and stuff. But apparently some elements of that exploration is coming back, and I think it's going to be like Dragon Age Inquisition.
I know the Mako's coming back. Or
the Mako is coming back for better or for worse. I fucking hate the Mako. So
Best part of Mass Effect 1.
Oh god.
No, I
so
don't believe
wrong.
that, don't worry.
Right, anyway, I've rambled on about Mass Effect, and honestly, my critical contributions to this don't go much further than me going, I fucking love Mass Effect. So, moving on. Another one that I suggested, but I believe Shabadoo suggested this as well, and again, there are other people. We've talked already about kind of open universe space games, but No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky will be an open galaxy space game where I believe, I don't know if it's already been done, but at some point in the development process, the galaxy will be procedurally generated in terms of the star, where the stars are. And when a player first enters, when a player is the first player to enter a solar system, that solar system is then procedurally generated.
Yeah.
Obviously, procedural generation can only do so much, so there'll be common themes throughout the galaxy and how things look and the kind of things on there. There'll be a crafting system, there'll be a combat system, there'll be all those kind of things, but primarily, No Man's Sky seems to be about raw, pure exploration.
Yeah.
The devs have, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm making this up off the top of my head off of half-remembered information, but I believe they said on their current estimates of how long it would take to define the entire galaxy would be about 1 million years.
They said our sun would burn out before we managed to define it all. Was
There
the
we
last
go.
thing I heard.
That might be bollocks.
Our actual sun.
I don't know.
Well, theoretically, the point they're saying at the moment is it's effectively infinite. They don't really have a limit in mind at all.
Yes.
So
The thing that appeals to me, where I'm not interested in Elite or Star Citizen to that degree, is that this is less about fighting, because they've said that you could play the entire game and never meet anyone because it's so big. And it's less about the actual flying of the ship, because that looks very arcadey.
Yeah.
It's raw exploration, and I am the first person to see this.
And the thing is, I think you can do that in Elite, and Sam will attest to that.
Oh yeah, you can.
But I think realistically,
But I don't want that realism.
I
Because
think
space is full of nothing.
Yeah, and Elite has lots of nothing in it.
Yeah, and the procedural generation in No Man's Sky goes so deep. Like you can go to the planet, and then the stuff on the planet is procedurally generated in terms of like animals running around.
Hundreds of plants and animal species. And that's the thing they say, like, you go to a planet, it probably will have life. It'll have all sorts of interesting things. It'll have caves, it'll have oceans, it'll have, like, interesting atmospheres, it'll have mountains.
Yeah.
And all the planets will have things like that to visit.
And you can wander around in that and just, like... I really hope it has home building stuff. Because that will be like the ultimate.
I haven't heard
escapism.
about that yet. Nothing at all. So
it's the kind of game they can expand upon massively, and there's a lot of hype about this, and there's again being a backlash about people going, "But what do you actually do in the game?" I love the look of the game as well. It's slightly cartoony looking, and I like that stylistically. It's very lush. I love that look of it, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll stop talking about it now because I think actually Shabadoo and Jojo and probably Chris Corline have more interesting opinions on it than I do.
So I think it looks a lot like some kind of Proteus versus... I don't know, what was the other game I was going to attach it to?
That's such a good touch.
It does look a bit
Proteus
like Proteus.
is such a good touchdown for it.
Yeah,
I'd put it halfway between Proteus and Elite, but...
I'd kind of like... I'd love this game if they shipped it in the manner of Proteus, in that you could have an objective, but you don't need to. Why not just go and build yourself a house in the middle of nowhere on a planet, which no one else is probably going to discover?
Yeah.
And do you know what? That would be perfect. But I have a feeling they're going to try and make it very big and put a lot of design. I don't think it needs too much design. Things that are this beautiful from kind of a mathematical rendering perspective, from just kind of the procedural nature of it, should kind of be be left alone, just left to be this beautiful, delicate fractal in cyberspace, which we can log into and explore without ever feeling that we need to fight over it or something like that. Maybe that's the game I want rather than the game I'm going to get, but I am looking forward to maybe taking it for a spin.
I think, though, regardless of whether it becomes focused on those kind of things, the scale of the game means that you can go, you know what? Fuck this noise.
Yeah.
And just leave
Yeah.
and go to the far side of the galaxy and do your own thing.
Yeah. Effectively, he does. The developer does say, like, or the lead developer does say that basically, if you randomly explore the world, it's full of players. There's lots of players playing it, but you probably won't meet anyone because it's that size. You know, you have to go and find.
Because the planets on it are planet scale, right?
Yes, they are.
So
How are you gonna
even
find
if there are 100 players on the planet you're on, which is extraordinarily unlikely, finding any of them without like them telling you where they are will be more or less impossible.
Yeah.
I just dread like a global chat channel coming up and someone saying LFG King Dude raid looking for 300 more legendary sets available. That you can put a lot of game design behind this game and you can turn it into any number of other games with a nice kind of a nice design at its core. I just really hope that they go, do you know what? There's enough. There are enough World of Warcrafts. There are enough Second Lives. There are enough. There's almost enough Proteuses. Let's just sit down and take this one nice and calm.
Yeah. I get the impression from hearing what the developers say that they are going down that line, and that was their original inspiration for the game. They wanted to create something that stands out in that way. You just go to the world and feel like, oh, this is just, I'm happy here.
When I play kind of space games, what I get the feeling is like I'm a jet fighter, I'm a freighter, I'm something like that. What I'd really love from this game is to get the feeling that I'm sailing, that I'm just kind of in this beautiful world. But
yeah. I think this is more likely than most other games I can think of that are being released, if any, to do that.
This is the game that will put the Firefly theme in my head the most.
Yeah, that's perfect actually. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So No Man's Sky. Right, on to our next game, which is Obduction. Chris, take it away. I will promise I will try not to mock too much.
Yeah, I just want to in the ongoing battle of the bastard not appreciating Cyan and Cyan Worlds. This is the man who gifted me Proteus as a present and said, this is the epitome of good games. There would be no Proteus without Mist and Riven. I'm pretty sure. Sure.
There's no puzzle element to Proteus.
Yeah, but that's not really the point of...
And it's not a PowerPoint presentation.
You see, this is where it all goes wrong between us. If you want a world to just absolutely dive into, and yes, granted, you're going to have to bring a strategy guide with you because otherwise it's this incredibly detailed and beautiful set of puzzles, but the world is what I got lost in, the world of Mist and the world of Riven. And it's with a little bit of sadness that I must say that they've detached themselves from the Dani civilization. They've detached themselves from the world that they have spent literally 3 decades now constructing. And have gone for this new spin, this new world to give us this Obduction. They've put it in proper full 3D, which didn't work too well for Cyan. Would you just stop? I swear to God. Go off and play Banner Saga, you Saturday morning breakfast cereal cartoon. This is... and I must point out as well that this is the original, more or less the original team. Like even the Miller brothers are both back working on this together. So whatever comes out of this is going to be really beautiful. And so far, beautiful has been the absolute watchword. The screenshots from it, the test videos we've seen are all just beautifully, just slightly twisted, just a little bit, just like everything you see just invites you to really dive into it and take start clicking on things and see what changes and what happens.
Putting my mainly groundless dislike aside for a moment, are the rough mechanics of this game, like, is it similar to in our last podcast, or one of our first podcasts that we did over a year ago now? We talked about it was called Mist Online, right? The MMO they did. Is it a kind of similar thing to that? Because that was 3D and stuff.
Yeah, it'll be. It looks like it's going to be a very much kind of a completely new IP, completely new setting.
Kind of walk around puzzle game sort of
Yeah,
thing.
effectively, these guys invented the walking simulator, and now they've come back to kind of plant their flag in it and go, actually, do you know what, lads, that's ours. They're absolute legends at just like world building in both in terms of here's a 40-page book you can read through if you really want to, and in terms of you can figure out exactly how this culture lives and survives based on just observing what happens in these sketchy 240 by 280 FMV sequences. You can figure out what's going on and how all these objects fit together. And I think in Abduction now they have the Unreal 4 is their engine, beautiful lighting, everything is just nice.
I must admit, I'd never heard of the game and went to search it and went on their website, and the front homepage, the text that just went down the homepage was just describing kind of, I can't remember exactly how it did it, but it was like, this is the world and things like that, and then the things you experience in it very, very briefly, and you're just like, what? Oh wow, that's really interesting. Because usually, you expect to be jumped on by a video or something. This was just some small phrase, like paragraphs of text. So I was just like, really made me kind of interested for the game. So it's worth taking a look at, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. This is 100 hours at least of investment if you're not prepared to cheat.
Yeah.
But it's games you can get lost in, and I must say this feels to me a lot like I hope No Man's Sky will feel to me.
Yeah.
I'm not buying these really for game engine. I'm not really buying them for gameplay. I'm not even really buying them for narrative. What I'm buying them for is environment.
Yeah, and it's odd because that's almost a theme with what a lot of the games we're talking about. We're talking about environment, we're talking about world building, we're talking about narrative, and we are, we're very focused on that kind of thing. Not many of us are, hardcore Counter-Strike types. So yeah, it's interesting though. Those are the kind of things that are providing the excitement for us coming up in the coming year. Speaking of environments and getting lost.
And excitement.
Certainly excitement.
We talked about this game a little bit in our games of 2015 by the very nature of it. And now we're going to talk again in terms of what's coming up this year for Star Citizen. Sam's just explode all over our listeners and viewers.
You start, Shabadoo, since you actually own the game.
I mean, I talked about it in the last one, and I should preface this by saying the other Sam, aka Jojo, is probably the only person I know as excited as me for Star Citizen. But basically, yeah, I enjoyed what I played of the game this year, but there's so much more happening.
Yeah.
I think I'm very excited for them just expanding what they've already got in terms of the world that you can explore and fly around in the multiplayer universe. I'm very excited for them adding new and bigger ships to the multiplayer universe, and
for a princely fee.
Yes, I think they have ships in the game right now that are like you could buy for about $400.
Mm-hmm.
And
just absolute madness.
They're adding. I think there are ships that you can pay about $1,000 for.
Yeah, it's absolute madness.
And people are buying them.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, you got to earn $105 million somehow, don't you, before releasing your game?
Yeah. It is insanity as well, how much money they have.
Yeah, there's so many features I'm excited for. It's expanding the universe they've already got in terms of like locations and ships and gameplay, but also I think a sort of half standalone shooting module is supposed to come out this year, which could be very good. And then also, I think that the single player is supposed to come out this year.
Yeah, it's due 2016, Squadron 42.
And the single player has a real chance at being absolutely amazing, even by the standards of purely single player games.
Yeah, if you cut out all of the rest of the game, the single player alone looks good. It's got
the single player is like a dogfighting RPG, right?
As far as I can tell, yeah.
I think the basic premises of it is that it will serve kind of as an introduction to the multiplayer part of the game, but you're kind of drafted into the military and you like go on missions with the military in various different ships and performing various different roles.
I expect there'll
So
probably be first-person shooter and things like that as well involved in it, since that's all a part of the game.
Yeah.
Well, I need to interject here because some of the people listening to this might be gamers. The single-player version of this is Wing Commander, and the multiplayer version of this is Wing Commander Online. And this is exactly what we paid for. This is the same guy, Chris Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And my caution is that if you go to a David Gilmour CD released in the last 10 years, you're not going to be getting Pink Floyd. You're going to be getting very comfortable middle-class nonsense rock. And I'm just worried that just because a good game designer has returned to the field with the same idea he had 15, 20 years ago does not immediately say that there's going to be a good game at the end of this. And let's be perfectly clear, this has all the hallmarks of the most expensive disaster to ever occur in gaming.
It is true. It is definitely true. I think the thing, though, that Sam and me are both most excited for is the idea that this is, above everything else, when you get to it, a multiplayer game which is truly first-person and mostly free roam exploratory, actually in space in a sci-fi world, which is something that we haven't really experienced before. Like, you can walk around inside your own ship while someone else is flying. You can walk around inside that capital ship while someone else is flying it. You can walk around in this part of the planet while people are flying above the planet, flying over the planet.
And
In that sort of free form way.
That's kind of the only element of it that really excites me in terms of, like, I'll tell you the precise situation in which if it pulls it off, Star Citizen will excite me. Mm-hmm. And that is that you can have a capital ship, you can have a capital ship that needs 30 crew to run. Mm. Each of those 30 people is an actual person playing, and each of those 30 people has a different job to perform on the ship.
Yeah.
So you could be the navigator who has to pilot the ship. You could be one of the gunners who has to, obviously, use the guns. Mm-hmm. You could be a commander whose job is literally to sit on the bridge and tell everyone what to do.
Yeah.
That interests me and excites me. I am skeptical.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I would expect that will be possible. Maybe not with 30 people, but maybe around that, but definitely with like 10 to 20. And I think the problem will be that it will probably only occur if you're part of quite a dedicated organization within the game. Mm-hmm. But even now there's like 4-person ships where you have one person, or that there's like it has a small ship that it can launch from it, like a fighter ship. It has a station in the bridge for controlling like the shields and controlling power to the engines, power to the different parts of the ship. It has obviously the person piloting, and it has 2 turrets.
Yeah.
And I mean that's already in the game. You can already have a fight between 2 of those ships with perhaps 4 or 5 people on board of each.
Yeah.
And
so this engineering role, this is what interests me. Is the engineering role just a mini game?
I
is
don't
it just balancing different columns?
I think partly at the moment, but it'll be based on. It's not. It doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
In the sense that most mini games do, like like for example, if you're controlling the shields of a ship, you control what side, like back to front, left to right, you want to have your shields be strongest on. So you're gonna have to coordinate.
And would
with everyone
there be
else.
a situation, for example, where your ship takes a hit, some part of the ship is set on fire, and whoever's nearest has to leave their station, leave whatever they're doing to go put out that fire?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would expect that will be.
That would definitely happen by full release. Yeah.
What about a situation that's the equivalent with Borders?
Yes, that's one of the things I'm most excited for.
Okay.
Boarding ships. This is
there are ships in the game which are intended. I'm not sure exactly how the system is going to work, but which are intended to have like a cutting thing on them where you attach to another ship and cut into them and then go and kill everyone on board.
Yeah, they're like heavy raiders from Battlestar and stuff.
It's
right?
moment. It's moments where, for example, a large boarding party were to... This is far future of the game, but this is the potential things that they're suggesting will hopefully happen. A large boarding party boards, say, a huge carrier ship, and assaults a carrier ship, does like a surgical assault into the center of the ship, takes out like the power, which then takes out the gravity, the artificial gravity on the ship. Then everyone is literally floating around on the ship, and there's gunfights going on this ship, taking out certain parts of it, trying to take control of the ship in zero gravity, potentially with mech suits. This is like the insane things that we're like really excited.
This is the thing. All these amazing stories come with a constant stream of potentially.
Yeah.
And this is what they want, and they've said that in the far future.
Yeah. That's the worry. But the thing is, we're starting to see some of these things coming through. As Sam says, we now do have multi-crew ships. That's something that people said, nah, they'll never do that. And it is starting to happen. I think boarding will happen at some point soon.
I've definitely been given a lot of confidence by what I've seen, even though it's still like way short of what they've promised. But the fact that they've got a physics engine working in the way that they have is really impressive to me. Because there's so many like local physics things where you need to be able, like you're flying a ship at like thousands of meters per second, maybe past a guy who's stationary on a space station. And then inside your ship, there can be somebody walking around. And the fact that that works at all, and it's multiplayer, it's online with like quite a few people in the instance, is very impressive to me that
works
they've done
now,
that. And it gives me confidence, but not complete confidence that they'll be able to do the rest of it.
So because I'm taking the role of Davy Downer on this particular review, I want to point out another potential problem. And it's a potential problem that is replicated in another quite famous kind of division of labour and multiplication of force kind of game, which is EVE Online. And you mentioned earlier that the larger ships are not only a large physical, real financial outlay to purchase, but require in-game support via other players to crew it, and in-game support with regards to like support ships, like fleet auxiliary, this kind of stuff. The same structures are built up around capital ships and the more specialized ships in EVE Online. And like even after 5 years playing EVE, I had not set foot in any of these ships. And I'm just worried that such a system is excluding players that do not have 30 plus hours a week to sink into these games.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility with these sorts of things. Although I feel like the issue with the capital ships here is you could have 30 people crewing the ship, and the ship would inevitably perform better that way. But you could, theoretically, I think the developers have said this, control the ship with one person and have the rest of the ship run with AI. It would be inferior, but you could.
Are you going to let potentially $1,000 worth of ship float about with the AI controlling the ships and guns?
You can buy this in-game with in-game monies once the game starts up.
Is there going to be what's the system in the game of stuff being destroyed?
I think at the moment it's basically that your ships can be destroyed and you'd lose them, but that you are expected, and perhaps it'll be automatic, but that you'll pay insurance on your ship.
Right, yeah.
But even paying insurance, the bigger ships will have to be built by the in-game economy. So even if you have insurance, it may take a while before you get your very big ship back.
Yeah.
Which, it's been an EVE Online since like 2004.
Yeah, the difference here is first person.
And the
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
But yeah, I'm looking at the cast list of the single player.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what's happening.
Have you not seen all that stuff? Oh, God.
I have seen it, but it just still blows my mind.
I think you mentioned a couple of people before. Like, isn't it Gary Oldman and...
Gary Oldman, Mark Hamill, Mark Strong, Liam Cunningham from Game of Thrones, Gillian Anderson, Andy Serkis. Like, by far the most star-studded cast of a video game that I have ever seen.
Yeah, the single player is shaping up good, I think.
Yeah, it's because they've been overfunded, though, and that's one of the real risk points for this. We all know what happens to drastically overfunded games. Like, so far, we've not had the best experience with them reaching market in a good state.
And also, we mentioned this last time, I think when we were talking about Broken Age. Overfunding is as dangerous to projects as underfunding.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, this is just be a battle between optimism and pessimism right here on this one. So, and we have already talked about Star Citizen in the previous episode. Yeah. So, let's move on to a completely different kind of space game. that's coming out from Paradox Games, which is Stellaris. So Stellaris may be I think it was on at least 3 of our lists. Or if not, it is now after they've checked it out. Like, Stellaris is going to be a hybrid grand strategy and 4X game produced by the current masters of grand strategy, Paradox Games. It's going to be a sci-fi thing that has, from a lot of, again, procedural development, another theme running through many of these games. And it's going to be, if what they've said about it is true, very in-depth, very interesting, and with a lot of capacity, as most of their games do, for roleplay and for story building in a way other than usual strategy games. Yeah, I have my own things that I'm interested in about this, but does someone else want to take it away just as a starting point?
So I was initially completely enchanted by the thought of Paradox even doing 4X. Now, we spoke about this before. I have problems with 4X. I don't like the fact that the game is basically an exercise in understanding and manipulating game design with very little space for kind of narrative action. And I think I raised this during Beyond Earth last time, when anyone who can fit a narrative into these things is good enough in my book.
Which is why you should play Endless Legend.
Yeah, well, I mean, I play Endless Space, and there is a narrative there, but it's secondary. It's unavailable almost to those who haven't mastered the mechanical aspects of it. Yeah. And I have absolute confidence in Paradox's ability to create a 4X that is not going to bring any great story to the table, but is going to take a good long look at these mechanics and make them better from a game design perspective, maybe not better from a user interface perspective, but that's why I'm so excited by these guys. I think Paradox are a great development house, and I think this is going to be a great game because of it.
I agree. I think the systems they're talking about are really interesting. It's the kind of grand sci-fi that I am interested in, which isn't so much ships fighting each other, but is things like you get to choose which races you uplift.
Yeah.
And then they turn into maybe like vassal empires or competitive things. The thing that really interested in it for me, just in terms of, they're obviously tying really interesting concepts into the strategy and into the 4X behavior. And the thing that actually completely sold the game to me was they were like, yeah, so you send scientists out, and the scientists go exploring these new planets and stuff. And sometimes they might encounter new cultures. But the thing is, there's various ways in which the scientists can interact with the cultures, and one of them is that if the culture is really different from yours in a number of its values and a number of its behaviors that are monitored throughout, like, the kind of cultural statistics and mechanics of the game, your scientists can slowly go insane. Like, in a kind of cosmic horror kind of way.
Yeah.
And I fucking love that. That is exactly the kind of... It just screamed like, CK2 and all those kind of elements of that game that allow you to build your own stories with the game.
Yeah.
And that's what's done it for me. I've actually stepped away from most of the information and preview stuff around Stellaris because I want to come to it really fresh and have it surprise and delight me.
Yeah, that seems fair. I thought it really fascinated me because I admit I don't know much about it. I only heard about it recently myself. But the combination of 4X strategy and exploration, because it really has a focus around the exploration element in it there, which I was like, that's not usually a primary feature of 4X strategies. It's like you want to build an empire and you want to explore to see where you want to settle next. It's pretty much as far as it goes. But this kind of real focus on actual exploration, discovery, and kind of meeting people and communicating with them, I was like, that's really interesting and a whole new twist on 4X.
Yeah. Any 4X where I'm not a very combative 4X player. As people who've watched any of my 4X series on the channel will know, Civ, Endless Legend, etc. I actually am generally not a big fan of combat in those games because a lot of it turns into a slugfest, where either to do with stacking or just number of units. And I quite frequently, if I'm playing Civ off-channel, I will actually go through an entire game without starting a war, and preferably not even being involved in a war. Ditto for Endless Legend, ditto for Endless Space, any number of 4X games. And I love the idea of playing a really idealized I don't know, like Star Trek style future sci-fi race where it's like, I don't want to fight you. I want to explore the galaxy peacefully, and I'll defend myself, but I'm just interested in meeting new races, maybe uplifting some of them, like just creating this society.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, and admittedly a lot of those previews were a while ago now, it looked to be the kind of game where maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
And that excites me. Yeah. Stellaris. Stellaris. Next one, about as far as it can get away from peaceful expansion. This is one of JoJo's. I think everyone here will have some interest in this, whether or not to play it, but from a perspective. We are all, it must be noted, ideal prime targets of the Games Workshop marketing machine, in that we all grew up male and teenagers in Great Britain and Ireland.
Middle class. And yeah, Total War Warhammer, which, as has been noted in a number of places before, is a really devastating missed opportunity to call it Total Warhammer. Damn it.
Indeed.
So it's a Total War game. It does the thing that Total War games do, but it's using the Warhammer IP from Games Workshop. Sam, tell us why this makes you juicy in your pants.
Basically, this is Total War as we know Total War, as Total War is developed recently. It's effectively like iterations on iterations, so it's an advancement from Rome 2, but it's in the Warhammer universe. So it's set with all the fantasy elements, it's set with all the magic of the Warhammer universe, it's set with all the different variable races and all the mystical creatures of the Warhammer universe.
It's got all 5 races from Warhammer.
The idea, yes, it has 5 races in it, only 5 races, only 4 if you don't pre-order, which has been a big source of contention.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 4 starting races, the 4 basic races that you will guaranteed get if you own the game, are the Empire, which is kind of standard as you expect the humans. The Orcs, you have to have Orcs in Warhammer, of course. The
Dwarves.
Accounts and the Dwarves. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the awkward one first. The Dwarves, of course, as well. And the Vampire Counts is a bit of an unusual one, of course.
It's a very unusual choice.
Yeah. I was a bit surprised with that myself, but it's kind of bringing a different element of the Warhammer world in there. This is, of course, the original Warhammer, not Warhammer 40k. In case
and the pre-order race is Chaos, right?
Pre-order race is Chaos, yes.
But they're available they will be in the game as an AI component.
Yes, you can play
whether or not you pre-order, but you can only play them if you pre-order.
Yeah.
Which is like a lot of the time, I think a lot of pre-order fuss is fuss, and I'm not that bothered by it. That is fucking outrageous.
Yeah. There was a lot of argument with that. The reason they gave, which you can argue yourselves whether you think this is acceptable or not, is they would simply not have the resources to put Chaos into the game without having money from pre-order now, and a game like this needs Chaos, so they had to do the pre-order.
The thing is,
maybe it's true. I'm not saying they're liars.
But just make the pre-order for the vampires.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
That's the thing. Like,
no,
Chaos...
literally, no one gives a shit about the vampire counts.
But then, they might not get the money they need. Then, Matt, the money they need, they can't make the game without.
Like, the interesting thing about this to me, other than the fact that Games Workshop are finally allowing people to make video games that actually are more like playing their tabletop games than adaptations of them.
Yeah.
See also Blood Bowl, but Warhammer and Warhammer 40k are things they've been very precious about allowing people to do actual proper battles with, outside of the RTS clicky of Dawn of War 2, Dawn of War, and so that makes it interesting for a start. Like, the setting is really good. It'll be the first Total War game that isn't historical, with extreme quote marks around historical. What makes it really interesting for me is they've talked about how much more narrative-based it's going to be than most Total War games.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've experimented on that before with Alexander, Napoleon, and Attila.
Yeah.
All have strong narrative campaigns, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I like the fact that the different factions have different very strong narrative campaigns that have characters in and all this kind of thing, and that sounds interesting and fun, and I'm very cynical about it, but there is a 15-year-old living inside my body,
oh God,
that's disgusting.
curled up against my spine.
Just stop this now.
15-year-old me would look at this game and just dissolve into a puddle of anticipatory goo.
Mm-hmm.
And for that I can't not get it.
Mm-hmm.
If they do a 40k version, it may well kill me.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm in on that one. Even I'm in on, I don't like your nerd sports. I'm not into your tiny fighting men, but if they do something with plasma guns in it, I'm thoroughly involved.
Yeah.
What a perfect marriage of two games that are more or less the same thing, one of which in the physical world and one of which in the digital one, coming together at long last.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a better group of people to do this than the guys behind Total War. Coincidentally, maybe not so much the best, but certainly the most similar to Games Workshop in that I know they're not exactly they don't exactly have the best reputation, and they're not exactly the most polished and problem-free games that have ever been released. But that's true for both parties, and I think whatever comes out of this it could well be a mess, but will be a beautiful mess.
I think that the thing with Total War games is that they get there in the end with their games, whether it be like they release a buggy game and fix it, or they release a game that doesn't quite like hit the mark, and then they'll release a follow-up to it which really pinpoints where they went wrong and fixes
they almost have like iterative cycles.
Yeah,
they do.
Where like they had their first generation of games and they were like, yeah, they're pretty good, and then they made Rome Total War. And everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. Then they had their second iteration of games. People were like, yeah, they're getting more and more problematic, though. And then they released Shogun 2. And everyone went, this is fucking spot on.
Yep.
They are in the middle of the next iterative cycle.
Yep.
Highlighted by the relative disaster that was Rome 2. Which, although apparently is a lot better now that
it is a lot better.
I really enjoy Rome 2.
I'm enjoying playing another one through now.
And also Attila is meant to be a massive improvement on it as well.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if Warhammer is that definitive one of this cycle.
If it will be so
whether it's 40k.
Good. Yeah. It will be so good if they get it just right, like they have done with some of their games in the past, and it's the game with Warhammer in it.
Yeah.
And it has like
regardless though, I was cynical, and then I watched their first promo video of it, which was like Blackfire Pass or something, which was dwarves fighting orcs.
Yeah.
And they had this thing where they just showed the battle lines when the wolf riders or the boar riders smacked right into like a dwarf line.
Yeah.
Dwarves went flying, then other dwarves like bolstered it, and they're all like dwarf war chants. And I was watching and going, I don't want to feel this way, but I really do, and I want this game.
That's the thing about the Total War games. Like, although you're playing a strategy game in like the larger macro view and in the battlefield, there's also a real, ever since Rome, the first Rome, there's always been like a cinematic element to it.
Yeah.
Where you'll watch like the enemy cavalry charging your lines and just be happy even though you're watching your soldiers get murdered.
Yeah.
Like, and with Warhammer, there's an even greater opportunity to do that, where you have like dragons and magic and like it's just going to be bigger and more of that aspect of the game.
Exactly.
And the thing is, that cinematic aspect is impressive even now for the older games. I am actually currently playing a campaign of Barbarian Invasion, which was the expansion for the first Rome Total War.
Yeah.
And I had a battle yesterday where I'm playing the Saxons, and I was fighting against like generic like rebel cavalry or something, and I had a unit of Saxon keels, and they're just kind of standing there with their shields and their spears, and the cavalry whacks into them, and the front line just goes flying, like gets knocked back, and I'm like, oh god, that's terrible. The cavalry wheel round and kind of wheel away, and as they come in for another charge, I quickly slam the unit into shield wall formation. And they just all come together really tightly, shouting stuff. And this is with old graphics and old.
Yeah.
It's still really impressive. And the second cavalry charge just slams into the shield wall and like crumbles. And then, like a couple of seconds later, they rout as the spearmen are hacking them down. And I was just there going, ah! And this is with things that look like little fucking like, you know, it's not a graphically impressive game anymore.
Yeah.
But you see through that.
Yeah.
For the cinematic value of it. And when you add on top of that, like you say, the magic, the fancy races, the orcs shouting "war" and then spider riders and crazy stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be impressive, no matter how buggy it is.
It's the interesting thing to show here is how those amazing battles that Total War have always done. They've had something like 3 or 4 different model shapes. I think me and Sam were discussing this a while ago. How they have basically, they have horse, man, and then like dog, and that's all.
Elephant.
That's exactly elephant.
Pig.
That's all the model shapes they have. In Total War so far, I don't think they've even completed them all. And they've got something like 16 different model shapes.
Yeah.
All with completely different animations and behaviors and model designs. Some of them flying. You're just like, it's a completely new level. And they've always done their battles so well. Yeah. With all this expansion, it's just going to be unbelievable. I think it's going to be totally...
And, there's going to be so much DLC.
There's going to be insane ones of DLC.
I don't know if I'll go all in on it, but you better believe I'm buying the Skaven. It's just... Skaven all the way. Anyway, moving on from our slightly embarrassing teenage wet dream coming through. The next game, and this might be, it may be one only I can talk about. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Has anyone else on this podcast played Uncharted?
What on earth is a AAA game doing on this list?
There's some other AAAs on this list. There's Mass Effect.
The real question. What is a PlayStation game doing on this list?
That terrifies me.
Well, we are not, even though we have only to date had PC games on the channel, we are not exclusively a PC gaming channel. We talked about Destiny on the last podcast, disgusting Chris.
This is also disgusting me, just for the record. We haven't even mentioned we have mentioned the game, that's okay.
Okay. The Uncharted series of games, being as these guys haven't played them, are a very... slightly arcadey, I guess, series of games on the PlayStation that are third-person shooters mixed with platforming and Tomb Raider-style puzzling and jumping around. They are very much a spiritual successor to the Tomb Raider games. Although I suppose technically the spiritual successor to the Tomb Raider games are the new Tomb Raider games. They are also an absolute love letter to Indiana Jones and kind of pulp serial style narrative. Mm-hmm. They are really funny. They are warm. They are really well written characters. Like, not well written characters as in, I can see the depths of... They're just fun. You really like the characters. The voice acting is very good. Nathan Drake is the character that's defined Nolan North's career. They are fun, amazingly well-made adventure games. And Uncharted 4 looks to be more of the same, with the added clarity that they always have quite evocative subtitles, I guess, that really sum up the games and kind of just... Uncharted is called Drake's Fortune, which immediately tells you everything you need to know about the character of Drake, like he's a treasure hunter and all this sorts of stuff. The second one is called Among Thieves, which is... It's just a great little phrase. I really like that title. I don't really know why. I just really like it. Then there's Drake's Deception, and the game is very about deception and double crosses and stuff like that. And the fact that this one is called A Thief's End obviously is teasing, is Nathan Drake going to die in this one? Or maybe it's like an about face and he nearly dies but then just retires. Or like, it's got a very conclusion-y feel to it. And that's... I'm so pumped for Uncharted 4. Like, I can't even... It's an area of gaming which actually doesn't exist that much anymore, which is a very mid to late 90s kind of like adventure game narrative. It's fun, it's got characters you remember, and it is console-y. They're very console-y games, but they're also just exquisitely made. Moment to moment, constant fun. And I'm really looking forward to the fourth one. And
they all look amazing. Is one
they
thing.
do look
Look
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
I recently got the remasters on PS4 of the original trilogy. And I remember playing... Uncharted, I think, was the first game I played on my PS3 when I got it. And it immediately hit me that this is a launch title or near launch title for PS3. I got my PS3 a number of years after the 360 and PS3 launched. And I put Uncharted in, a launch title from a few years prior. And I thought, this looks better than anything on 360 now. Yeah, they are gorgeous games. And they're just... they're so good.
I remember people going crazy over the fact that his shirt gets wet in the first one. You're like, what?
Yeah.
His shirt's wet.
It has like lots of little touches like that. And the second one has like snow, and when you walk through it leaves footprints and things like that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. There's not a lot of discussion we can do about it because none of you have fucking played it, any of the Uncharted games. But believe me, they're really good, and this one will be really good. And you should all buy PlayStations and immediately play all of them.
The trailers they showed at E3 in 2015 looked amazing. I must admit. I don't actually know if it was an engine or not. It seemed like it was an engine. It looked absolutely gorgeous, I must admit.
Yeah.
So I've seen a few things about it and just been
Most of the cutscenes in the Uncharted games are in engine.
Yeah.
And they're still very pretty. At least I think they are. Either that or the games are pretty enough that I thought they were in engine. That's that really. I don't think. I just wanted to say I'm really excited about Uncharted 4.
Good for you, Matt. Good for you.
Leave a comment if you, like me, are excited about Uncharted 4. Okay, last one on the list. I think everyone put this in their lists. XCOM 2. XCOM 2 arrives on the 5th of February.
Hype.
Oh, that's not even that long.
I was excited for this when they announced it because I love XCOM. Long-time viewers of the channel will know through XCOM video, like the XCOM series that we've made. I love XCOM. It's great. Everyone else here, I think, loves XCOM as well. I was excited when they announced it. I was excited when they did initial previews. And then over the last week, a lot of YouTubers have done previews of the beta build. Oh, I can't wait. XCOM 2. It's obviously very similar to the original game, but it has a number of twists and interesting changes and tweaks to the way it runs things, new mechanics, and it looks like the very ideal of an iterative sequel in that it has all the stuff you love, but it's made improvements on all the things that can be made improvements of. It's taken the advice of the community in a number of areas, specifically the Long War modders, and
made on staff.
Some of whom are now on staff, and others of whom are designing a new game of their own. And it has layered on new mechanics that it's seriously thought about, such as the concealment mechanic, where a lot of the missions you start effectively in stealth, and so can set up ambushes and stuff like that. The fact that you're rebelling against, like you have a sort of almost guerrilla fighter / terrorist theme to what you're doing, which is really interesting. Graphically, it's made leaps and bounds. New aliens look amazing and like they're going to have me swearing so hard. Here's an example, and close your ears if you don't want to be spoiled in any way about the aliens in XCOM 2, even if they're ones that have been announced. I had no idea about this, but I was watching a preview made by Quill18. Go check out his channel; it's really good. Where he was doing a kind of terror mission, and he encountered an alien called the Faceless. And the way in which he encountered this is that he ran his soldier up to a civilian to rescue them, which people who played XCOM will know is a situation that happens. That civilian immediately changed into a 7-foot-tall, oozing, horrible shapeshifter creature, and with a devastating melee attack. And oh my god, I saw that and I was so thrilled. And being thrilled had two weird components to it. One was, that is amazing, and the other one was, I fucking hate you, Firaxis, because I know for a fact I will be playing this game and that will happen to me, and I will go, you've ruined everything. Glorious.
One of the things that is revolutionary about XCOM 2 is that its narrative takes a negative outcome from the original game.
Yes.
The canon ending for XCOM is failure.
Yes, which admittedly is probably the canon ending for most people's playthroughs of it. So, yeah.
And another thing to point out, not to pump someone else's channel, but Beagle Rush has already started his playthrough of it somehow.
His Legendary, which he's already modded. Because they have made it very easy to mod, and he's already modded it to make Legendary difficulty harder.
Oh my god.
What a psychopath. Seriously.
He is. His stuff's great. Yeah, we don't often big up other people's channels, but we do like to do that. Quill18, Beagle Rush, both excellent channels. Go check them out. I don't say that in the hope that they will say similar things back, because they have absolutely no idea that we exist. But yeah, anything to add about XCOM 2, gentlemen?
It's just, I guess, echoing Chris's perspective on that, though, but it is really unique. Like, most games have that kind of iterative, we'll expand on this, and we'll keep the same mechanics, and we'll keep, the same kind of storyline, like Mass Effect and everything, and Deus Ex kind of follows the same storyline, whereas here in XCOM, it's the same fundamental storyline of fighting the aliens, but from a whole different perspective and a whole new angle, which makes it really interesting.
It's
I
really
just come at it and go, wow, okay, this is totally new, but also the same game that I love, and that's really wonderful. You just don't see quite a sequel quite like that very often.
And the places where they're innovating in terms of gameplay, like it sounds like if something was given to you on a bullet point list on the back of one of those cardboard boxes that games used to come in, it's like you can move your base. You're like, oh, that's a nice gimmick. And you look at how they've actually implemented it in engine, and they've changed entirely how the territorial system of the game works.
Yeah,
and it's just textbook good game design. And
it is.
Look, none of us have played it really well enough yet, but I'm just going to call that a very good game.
Yeah, it does look like that, and it's just lots of little things that they've drip-fed, that are obviously things that they've had feedback about, and they already did that with Enemy Within. Enemy Within did a lot of the things that people really wanted it to do, but one of the things that really stood out for me as information they've done is, like, again, I think I picked this up from a Quill Team preview, but he just looked at the long list of things he could build on the new base, and one of them was like an area with guns for defense. It was just like, oh god, another moment of just, oh, that's amazing but terrifying. So that's just really good. XCOM 2 is coming out, I think before any of the other games we talked about today. It's coming out on 5th of February. We will have a series go up for XCOM 2 almost as soon as it comes out. So that is something to look forward to. So if you like,
and maybe some two-player, if they fix their multiplayer experience, there could be some options.
Yeah,
to pick holes out of each other.
We try to do multiplayer on XCOM, but for some reason, when me and Chris try and play XCOM multiplayer, it freezes up on us constantly. So
I think it's pretty broken.
It is pretty broken, I think. Although it's a good little feature. But yeah, those are our games of 2016. If you like what you've heard, and thank you if you've made it all this way through. If you're listening to this on something other than YouTube, we actually have a YouTube channel called A Town Called Bastard. Go check us out with the top search on there. We have all kinds of videos for video games, board games, stuff like that. Please do leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And let us know what you'd like us to talk about in more podcasts of this style. Obviously, we can only do this kind of thing once a year. But if you'd like to hear us talk about anything else to do with video games or board games, please let us know. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.